Hello, this is Regulus Lightcaster here for the Deep Talks podcast. My guest today is Larry Vorwerk. He wrote a book on called Awakening to Oneness, and he has a couple Facebook groups. Would you like to mention those?
Yes, my book I wrote is called The Bartholomew Effect, Awakening to Oneness. It was published in 2010. I also have a Facebook group called Awakening to Oneness, and I have well over 5,000 members in it, and it's a very active group. We're getting as many as 100 new members per week now, and all you have to do is link in and join the group. You can be a visitor as well as a member. You don't have to be a member in order to see the post or to make comments. It's a public group. I also have a Facebook group with my name, with just my writings in it. Some of these writings are from my book, and some are more recent writings that I've had done on different spiritual topics as such. My book is really divided in two sections. Well, the first section is my spiritual autobiography, which takes you through my life journey and my awakening process, as I would like to call it. And the second part of the book is a series of different writings. Some are like poems, some are meditations, some are what if series, where what if life was this way or that way, what would that look like? And then other series of different types of writings. All are things that would help a person wake up to the truth of our being. I might mention in the beginning, in this process of awakening or enlightenment, it's really it's an inward journey where a person comes to know the truth themselves, which is truly we are consciousness itself, part of God or source energy, as I would prefer to call it. Everything is connected. There is no separation. Only in the 3D world of space and time here on this earth do we feel like we're separate from each other in all of life. But in reality, in the higher dimensions or states of consciousness, we merge together as one consciousness, ultimately becoming that complete consciousness of source energy. So anyway, that's just a quick overview of what I've done, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. I wanted to start off. So I was curious. You have had this great change in your life that has affected you, and then you were able to become awakened, as you would say yourself. So what was going on in your life before you came to this realization, and what has happened since?
Yeah, just a little quick background of myself. I grew up in a family of 5 other brothers and sisters. My parents were Catholic, and I was raised Catholic. And as such, up until, probably my 20s, I just followed a normal life like most others. I had a bachelor degree in fisheries and wildlife biology, and then had a career as a zookeeper, mainly at the Minnesota Zoo in Minnesota here. And so that was kind of my secular life as such. But I've always questioned about life. Why are we here? Where are we going? And who are we? And so I started reading a lot of books on quantum physics and other type of spiritual metaphysic books, and that has helped me start that journey of really getting to know who we truly are. Also, probably the biggest personal experience I had that really changed my life was back in 1988. I had a oneness experience. And what I mean by that, I talk about this in my book. And I'll just mention this before I get into that, is that I do give out my ebook free to anyone that's interested in it. All I would need is your email address to send it to you. And you can messenger me on Facebook with that email address, and I'll send it to you. But anyway, that oneness experience was, I was in bed one night and not sure what brought it on, but I went into a higher state of consciousness. And in that state of consciousness, another soul literally merged with me. And with that came an exponential sense of awareness, illumination, and knowledge and wisdom. And that continued with more souls literally merging with us until there was roughly about 12 souls as one. And I mean that literally as one consciousness. Well, anyway, that creates a great energy, and I intuitively knew that if any more souls merged together, that my physical body would not be able to contain the energy that it created, and I would actually burst into flame and lose my physical body. Fortunately or unfortunately, I decided to come back to this state of consciousness, and here I am today. I understand why I came back now. But anyway, to make a long story short, it wasn't until about 9 years later that I realized or found out who these other souls were that merged with me. And cut to the chase, those souls were the other disciples of Jesus. Now, I questioned myself, well, who am I that these souls would actually merge with me in that experience? Well, anyway, through some hypnosis and past life regression, I was taken back to that time of 2,000 years ago when I was Bartholomew, one of Jesus' disciples. And that's the reason why the book is called The Bartholomew Effect, Awakening to Oneness. I had many recalls of that lifetime, but the first time that I met Jesus in that lifetime, and I get emotional every time I talk about it, is that Jesus was walking along this road in this village area, and I was a root crop farmer as Bartholomew working on the hillside. And I happened to notice that as Jesus was walking, a seagull flew down to him and landed on his hand. And that kind of amazed me because these are wild birds and usually won't do that. So I walked down to Jesus at that time and asked, how did you do that? And he said, I just did it with pure love. And then I just followed him ever after that. Over the years, I get more recalls of a lot of different past lives and other experiences, and came to realize that I actually had traveled with Jesus in many other lifetimes previous to that last lifetime that Jesus came to this earth as such. And so anyway, that was kind of the start of my journey, especially. I had at that time been reading or writing some of my own series of information, like I mentioned earlier, that is in my book, like some meditation, some poems, some spiritual journaling. But and I had shared that with other people in my packet of material that I had. But then back in 2008, I got a message that now was the time to put it into book form. And so at that time, I decided, well, maybe it's time to start working on that. And I was at a healing session one time with a friend. And while I was in that healing session, Jesus came to me and told me what the title of the book should be called, which was the Bartholomew Effect, Awakening to Oneness. Well, at that time, I just wanted to put in those books, or that book, those series of writings, and I didn't even want to mention the Bartholomew Effect itself. But then as I started writing things, my wife, who was my first editor, and then my professional editor, told me, if you're going to include the word Bartholomew Effect in the title of the book, you got to write what it is. So anyway, with the help of my professional editor, I started to write that part of my spiritual journey. And as I went along, I started saying more and more. And eventually I just said, well, I'll just tell the whole story. And so I did. And that's why that part of the book is probably the first half, roughly the first half of my book. But anyway, as time goes on, I started my Facebook group, Awakening to Oneness. And I started to, at first, it was a slow process for many years. It was just friends and other people I knew. But then back in 2019, this was right before the pandemic started. My intuition told me that now was the time that I really came here for Earth to help awaken others' souls. And so I started to write and share other posts in my Awakening to Oneness Facebook group at that time. And in the last 4 or 5 years now, it has exponentially grown quite a bit. And right now I have roughly 5,300 members, as well as many visitors that come. And in that group, I post different posts that I get from other spiritual groups, as well as some of my own writings and some other things like a healing post, some of my own writing, like I said, and usually about 11 or 12 posts per day. And then many people make comments to those, as well as my own comments that I try to put after each post. And it's really attracted a lot of people. I've had people now from probably 70 to 100 countries around the world and all continents. Even have one person from Antarctica. Not sure what she does down there, probably a scientist. But anyway, it really has spread a great deal. And I think there's a lot of people today that just don't fit in with the old belief systems of traditional religions any longer. And they're seeking a greater understanding of the truth of our being. And so groups like my own does attract a lot of people nowadays, I believe, because we are all trying to get a better understanding of why we're here, where we're going, and all of those other great questions that humanity have had for many time.
One thing that you touch on that I think that a lot of people like, I want to say, not that they're not aware of it, but that we look past, perhaps intentionally for some people, is the immaterial nature of our physical reality. The fact that everything seems to have a physical definition, but it was a construct. Something like it was made, it formed over time, whether it's biological and it grew, or it was formed by human hands and was put into the shape we see it as now. The truth is that everything is immaterial as a construct, and we are the ones who feel that it's there when it's actually moving energy.
That's right. And that's probably one of the biggest aha moments or changes with humanity right now, is that this physical world that we live in, which seems very solid and real to us, is really nothing but a dream. And even modern physics now, one of the books I read within the last year says there really is no out there. Everything is within ourselves. And space and time is that dream world. And just like dreams we have at night, they're just as real as the dream world that we're living in this physical realm. And now it seems very real, but yet in reality, all we are is consciousness itself. We are the observer of this dream world that we are in. And also the other interesting fact that science has even proven is that time isn't linear like we perceive it to be. Actually, there's only the eternal now. And as such, we have decided to believe that there's a linear time. And for us in the 3D world, this is a great thing, because when we have a thought, we have linear time to change our thoughts or change our actions before they become manifested in our world. If you go into the higher states of consciousness, you experience it as soon as you think it. And examples of that would be like a lucid dream. A lot of people have had lucid dreams or out-of-body experiences like I have. And when you are in that state of consciousness, you experience it just as it happens. And Out of body experiences is a state of consciousness where your consciousness leaves your physical body. You go to another place and time, and or time, and as such, you experience it that instant that you think it. I'll give you one experience I had just a few years ago, where I went into an out of body experience, and I went back in time about 30 years into a parallel universe. And in this parallel universe, I arrived at my parents' house, and they were still alive. At this time in this world, or this physical realm, my father and parents had passed away about 17 years earlier. And so when I arrived at the house, and I was just as conscious as I'm talking to you right now, my parents were there and a few of my siblings. And so I realized that I was in a different universe, and I hadn't seen my dad for, like I said, 17 years. So I asked him, can I give you a hug? And he, matter of fact, said, well, sure, what's the big deal? You know, I see you all the time. But for me, I hadn't seen him alive for 17 years. So I gave him a hug, and it was surreal, you know, because I was as conscious as I'm talking to you right now. So anyway, there's many other things that happened in that experience, but that's not relevant right now. But I did come back to this reality, and it was so surreal. It made me realize we are so much more than just our physical bodies in this time and place. We can go to other worlds. I've had dreams where I've been on other planets and other worlds, and life forms are different than here. I had one example I'll just quickly say. There were several people walking on this road, and all of a sudden I appeared in back of them, and they turned around and saw me, and they asked, where did you come from? And I said, oh, I just came from Earth. And so as we were walking along, there were some cattle in the field, and they had these back plates on their back that looked like those certain types of dinosaurs, which we don't have on this planet. So what planet I was on, I'm not sure, but it was another experience in another realm or another planet. And so we can have these type of experiences when we are open to it. And it just shows you that we are so much more than just this physical body, and that everything is connected. So it's just a matter of raising our vibration and being open to these experiences.
One thing I wanted to get at is even physically, synchronicity is a common topic that's been talked about. It's something I've experienced. It's something I'm sure you've experienced, where you think something and then it physically manifests before you. And I want to say that I think that that's also, you were talking about astral projection, or not, maybe not astral projection because you're physically traveling rather than mentally imaging yourself traveling. But anyways, what I'm getting at is that the effect of raising vibrations can also create synchronicities in the physical world. It's not just in a
Right.
ethereal plane.
Yeah, synchronicity is basically just another term for coincidences. And they happen all the time if a person is aware of them. And because everything is interconnected, it truly makes sense. You can be thinking about somebody that you hadn't talked to for a long time, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and there they are on the phone. Well, our thoughts communicate back and forth since everything is interconnected in a sense of the word. And so we can manifest a lot of things in our world if we're open to that vibration as such. And we do, just that most people don't give it a second thought, or just think it's a weird coincidence.
What do you think about attachment then? Like, how do you feel like, because for what I've learned about, say you want to intentionally manifest a synchronicity, you want someone to call you that you're thinking of. If you are not attached to that outcome, it's more likely to happen than if you are attached. At least that's from my experience and what I've seen. What role do you think attachment versus detachment plays on this whole process for you?
I'm not quite sure where you want to go with that exactly. You want to explain it?
I'm just
Attachment as
curious.
far as somebody from the astral plane, you mean, or just attachment because you feel energetically connected?
I guess desire is what I'm where I'm going with attachment. The feeling of desiring a specific thing or a specific outcome, desiring a specific location to travel to, something along those lines. Would you find that if you desire something, it creates resistance?
Uh, it depends on what type of energy you put into it. I'll give you an example that may not be exactly like that, but uh, in my first marriage, which didn't go well. I won't go into the aspects of it, but basically, it eventually ended in a divorce because my former wife had a lot of issues. And I desired a certain type of person in my life as a partner. And at first, I just thought, well, somehow she would change her ways, if we went to counseling and things like that, that would change. Well, it never did. And in truth, it never would have. But eventually, I went through a divorce, and actually, about 6 months into my divorce, this other person appears in my life, and eventually we got married, and we're still married for 27 years. And she fits the
Congratulations.
bill. Thank you. And she fits the bill of most of the things that I desired or wanted to have in a relationship. So did I attract her? In some sense of the word, I did because we had similar vibration. And I also think that on the other side, before we incarnated on this earth, that we had decided who we would connect with and for what lessons we would learn. Um, Make a long story short, I found out later that we probably had like 28 lifetimes together. And the first time that I met her in person, we were at a restaurant at Perkins and eating, drinking coffee and having a piece of pie. And within 2 hours of talking, it felt like I had known her for 20 years and fully trusted her. And it was the first thing that convinced me of reincarnation completely, because this was somebody, to my knowledge, I had never seen or talked to beforehand, and all of a sudden there was this close attachment and realization that came over me. Even after almost 20 years of marriage to my first wife, I still never fully understood her, partly because of all the issues she had, but for other reasons too. And everybody comes into our lives for a purpose or a reason. There's usually a lesson that we need to learn. Some of those lessons are good ones, some aren't. Like in my first marriage, I learned a lot of lessons, but it was through hardships and issues that I had to work through. In my present marriage, for the most part, it's been a great relationship, and we've actually support each other. And in other words, it's kind of like we're greater than the sum of the two of us. And of course, that is something that we all kind of desire in one way or another.
I'm not married and I'm single, so I have no way to relate. But I hope, very much hope I can experience something similar one day. I
Well, I
think,
just have something to say about that. Let's get back to what we talked about earlier. Put out the intention that of what you want in your life as far as a relationship goes. And I always say that intention is 90% of manifestation and action is the other 10%. I mean, you put out your intentions to the universe and the universe takes care of the details and bring it to you. Of course, you have to act on those things that the universe brings to you. But so that's why it's so important to have the pure intentions of what you truly want in your life.
I see. So perhaps it's the lust rather than desire that brings resistance from the universe's giving you and giving into your like desired manifestation. And the pure,
Yeah,
because you said pure intention, right? So
yeah,
when you say pure intention, it alludes to a hint of like not being, like not wanting to dominate, not wanting, you're submitting to that, like to the universe giving in or giving you reciprocating. You're giving into reciprocation with your energy versus trying to make something happen.
Yeah, it also goes, your pure intention is those intentions that are desirable for your soul's journey or growth. And if they match that, then and you act on it, then it will manifest. If you're desiring something that isn't for your soul's growth or isn't beneficial to you, you may manifest it, and then you may not, depending on a lot of previous reincarnation intentions that you have, or a soul journey that you're on as such.
I appreciate that. We kind of went around about, but I got a good answer to my question. Thank you.
Okay.
What I was going to say is, how do you feel like now that you've awakened to oneness and you have had this integration with your past lives, do you feel more whole as a person? Like, do you think that your existence is more complete than it was before?
Yeah, so how I'll answer that is I'm more at peace. I feel like I'm on the right path. To say you're fully awakened is kind of a ego trips as such, because another way of saying this is the more that you know, the more you know you don't know, which is very true.
Yes.
There is no end to our expansion and awareness. And the thing is, but you do go into higher states and more expansive experiences as you awaken, I believe. Just like I said, since I become more awakened, I've had out-of-body experiences, I've had parallel universe experiences, I've had higher dimensional consciousness experiences. These are things that I never had when I was a young adult or a child. So these are expansions of our awareness of who we truly are. It can go way beyond that. Just another thing that I might mention, in one of my earlier out-of-body experiences, I went into the future of where this is a question a lot of people have asked, and I've never seen it answered anywhere other than talking to Greg Braden one time years ago about this, that he replied that the Aborigines that he had worked with had mentioned it in themselves. And that is, okay, let's say you go through many reincarnations of life here on this earth. What happens after you fully experience all that you need to experience? Well, what had happened to me in that out-of-body experience, this was years ago, was that you then or can become part of the group consciousness of the evolving planet. Just like Mother Earth or Gaia, it has a consciousness, just as all things have consciousness. A planetary consciousness is made up of a group consciousness of evolved souls who have decided to move on. And in that out-of-body experience, I come to know that I was part of this new evolving planet and part of this group consciousness. Now, that experience is totally unlike anything in the human physical realm, so it's impossible to talk about it as such. But over the years since then, I've had input to greater degree about that experience in that next lifetime. What I was told is that it really makes up about 60,000 souls of individuals that makes up this group consciousness as one consciousness, similar to that first experience of oneness that I had that I mentioned back in 1988 when the other disciples merged with me. So anyway, and then you might ask, well, what happens after that? Well, maybe you become the consciousness of a universe, or who knows? I mean, I'm not saying everybody goes to that next stage, but it's just one possibility for some of us. just like there are some souls that never incarnate on this earth. You might call them angels or spirits, orbs, or whatever other term you want to call them. So there's many avenues or directions that we can have experiences, and not everyone necessarily will have all of those.
One of the common tropes I often hear is that the reason people wouldn't want to leave Earth is because they're too used to the pleasures of the flesh, or to have a physical vehicle to exercise their will and intention through, outside of just being loose and floating around, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, well, there's some truth to that. I mean, I won't deny the pleasures of the flesh or the earth. And yet, at the same time, compared to the oneness that we truly are when we merge with other souls, is so much greater than any earthly pleasure. It's no comparison.
I agree 100%. I agree.
And, for somebody that hasn't experienced those higher levels of love or oneness, it's hard to explain that. Another way I like to explain that pure love is that when I'll backtrack a little bit. Since that time when I first had the recall of being Bartholomew and meeting with Jesus, I've had many times when I channeled Jesus or felt his love energy. Well, anyway, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I literally started to merge with his love energy. And literally when that happens, the only thing you can do is merge with it. There's no other option.
Yeah.
And
Christ consciousness.
It's one love consciousness that is one. And the more that you do that, you realize how many untruths we were told through traditional religions.
Yes.
Growing up as Catholic, it was like Jesus was this person, and I could never measure up to him. And yet, when you merge with Jesus, there's nothing else like that, in the sense that it's just pure love, and there's no judging, no condemning, or any of those other things that traditional religions like to throw at people just to have control over them or have power over the people. But I won't go into that. But we're all at different stages. We're all at different stages of awareness. And so, wherever people are at is right for them. There's no judgment about that as such.
I'll give you a second to read that.
Yeah, my wife just gave me a note here. She's telling me to turn off the oven at a certain time. I still live in this physical realm.
Always gotta get the little reminders here and there, oh, my body hurts. What's up with that?
That brings up another point. After a while, when you're in this awakening process, you start to live in two worlds at once. And you still got to chop wood, carry water, chop wood, as the saying goes.
Yes.
As well as go off into space or other realms of being. As I always like to say, is I have one foot reaching for the stars and the other foot planted on the ground.
That's the way to be grounded and seeking at the same time.
Right. So one way I keep grounded is I'm a naturalist. I had been a zookeeper my whole life career. And I have a big vegetable garden. I have a little wildlife area that I created with a pond to attract wildlife. So these are things that help keep me grounded on this earth, so I'm not off flying in space all the time. No, I do that too.
It's good to have things that are natural that keep you in the world as well. Like I've been listening a lot to the works of Leo Tolstoy, and he really puts a lot of emphasis on having your natural existence and creating like routines with nature, right? And that's kind of like what gives you that awareness that you are here now, even though you might be elsewhere also.
Right. Well, that's true. I go we have two big dogs, and I go out hiking usually 3 miles a day in a natural area, just to commune with nature and be physically active and all of those things. So you still got to live in this world, regardless of how aware or conscious you are. And it's a balancing act, and it also makes you human. If you're out in space all the time, people just kind of ignore you or think you're crazy as such.
Yes.
But anyway,
this leads me actually perfectly to my next question. I've been toying with it in my head for about 5 minutes now. What do you think about the immanence of the concepts of heaven and hell? Immanence means presence in the moment. So in a vibrational context, do you think those who have not become awakened yet could be perhaps experiencing either a lower vibration or a purgatory state, and then those who choose to willfully do bad lower themselves into a negative state of consciousness, and then those who help others without seeking rewards for themselves may ascend? How do you I know those are generalized examples, but you get what I'm saying?
Well, everything is energy, and so everything has vibration, and there's different levels of vibration, and so it depends on where a person is at. If you have low energy, you might be doing things that have a negative effect on other people or on life itself. And there is no true hell, as religion would tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't create hell for yourself. And there are many people on this earth at this time that are really experiencing a hellish type of existence. But that isn't their true self. Eventually, there's always a spark of light somewhere in their reality.
There's always redemption for any sinner.
Yeah, and I hate to use the word sinner because there really is no sin. Another way that I've heard said is that you just missed your mark. In other words, if you have a bow and arrow and you shoot at a target, you might not hit the bullseye, so you missed your mark. That doesn't mean that it's all over. You just try better the next time, and eventually you'll hit the mark. And so, and everything is a learning experience, especially here on this earth. We're here to learn lessons, to grow and become more consciously aware. And it's through these lessons that we do that. And I believe that you can learn these lessons in the higher realms too, or when we're not in physicality. But from everything I've read is that we have a greater chance to grow faster while we are incarnated on this 3D world. You've heard a lot talk about that as a humanity and the earth itself, we're moving into a 5D world, which is basically another higher state of consciousness. When I had my oneness experience that I mentioned earlier, I considered that a sixth dimensional state of consciousness. And that's where everything merged together as one. And that continues even into the higher realms of consciousness. A lot of scientists believe there's 11 dimensions to consciousness. There's 11 dimensions to reality or higher states of consciousness. And some of those higher states is beyond our comprehension when we're here in this physical realm.
One thing about dimensions specifically is if you don't reference what the measurement they're using for the specific dimension is, then it's not really relevant because it's an abstract measurement. We have a point, we have a line, we have the exterior shape of a 3D sphere, like a shape. Fourth dimension is time, space time, and then fifth dimension is supposed to be spirit. At least from what people have been saying, is the fifth dimension is supposed to be the moving principle of everything is always in motion.
Yeah, it's another way of looking at this is if you're in a higher dimension or state of consciousness, you can understand somebody that's in a lower state. But if you're in a lower state, it's hard to comprehend a higher state. I'll just give you a earthly example. A few years ago, my wife and I traveled to Belize for vacation, and we came back. Now, if I told my two dogs about what that vacation was like in Belize, they would have no concept of what the heck I'm talking about, you know. And yet, when I try to communicate, being a zookeeper and working with animals my whole life, a lot of times I try to lower my state of awareness to their level of consciousness so that they can relate more to me. And when you do that, then they can relate to you and feel the connection as such. So that's just another way of looking at consciousness, I believe.
Man, you're great. I out of everyone I've interviewed so far, I resonate the most with what you've told me and what you've been talking about. I just want to say on a personal level, I really respect and appreciate your insights and your experiences and your willingness to share them. I think you're very courageous, and like you're very outgoing too, to be able to sit here and say, this is me, this is my experience, this is what I believe, and not be afraid of what people might think about that.
Well, thank you for that comment, and I appreciate that. I'll just backtrack a little bit. You know, for many years, I always thought, gosh, I came to this earth too soon. Humanity isn't ready for what I have to share. But it really wasn't until about the time the pandemic started that I realized all those previous years were meant to be so I could gather all the wisdom and information so that I could share it at the time that it really was important to do so. And I believe the 2020s that we live in right now is a critical time for humanity for many reasons, to save our planet from destruction from climate change and environmental destruction, and then also to help elevate the awakening of human consciousness on this earth. And so by putting out that intentions to, you know, be there for other people, help them assist them on their own awakening for those that are interested in it, I find life had brought the right things to me to do that. And my Facebook group is one of those avenues, as well as my book. And who knows what the future might bring in other ways, too. I'm open to that. So, yeah, it does take courage to speak your truth. But I always say, you know, you have to be your authentic self, or else you're never going to be happy and you never can reach your full potential. And in the process of doing that, there is some separation feelings that go on with family and other close people that you grew up with as such. And I know my own family, I grew up in a healthy, loving family, but none of my other brothers and sisters see things anything like I do. And so when it comes to spirituality and politics, they usually just don't talk about it.
I have the same relationship with my family. I guess we're both black sheep.
Yeah. Well, we're just different sheep, or different species, maybe. I don't know. But yeah. But you learn to live with it. That's the key is to find other like-minded people.
One of the things they say about us is that it skips a generation, that our grandfathers were like us, so to speak.
Yeah, that might be true. I haven't really thought of it that way, but I do follow a lot of. My father was a very loving, non-judgmental person, and even though he was a strict Catholic, and I don't follow that route, he did live his values quite well, and I did pick up on that. And so it isn't so much the words that we tell people; it's how we live our life that really impacts others.
Leading by example, exactly.
Living by example, right.
Oh, man. That's about, we can stop now or we can keep going. It's up to you.
Well, if you have any other questions or other concerns that you would like me to talk about.
Honestly, everything you've covered is great. I don't really have any more questions. I think that we got enough covered that we can promote your book, and it was good content for me also. Keeping it shorter makes it so I don't have to separate it out into 2 episodes. I've noticed
Sure.
that second episodes don't get as many views as just either one long episode
Okay.
or first episode.
I'll just make a few other quick comments, and that is, there's many ways to experience oneness, but probably one of the greatest ways that most people can is by being of service, and being of service to other people, to the planet, to whatever you're drawn to. And you do it without expectation of getting something in return. And that's what I do. I give out my ebook free. I do sell a paperback copy for those that are willing to pay the wholesale price of the book plus postage. If it's in the United States, the total would be around $15. But at the same time, if somebody really is interested and don't have the money, I'll ship it to them anyway, and I've done that in the past. And my key is just to be of service to humanity and the earth in whatever way the earth and the universe brings that to me. Instead of seeking people to talk to about this, the universe brings those to you. And so I just stay open to that, and it comes in many different ways. So I'll just kind of leave it that way, just to remind people that if they're really interested in what I've just shared, to come to my Facebook group, and if they're interested in the ebook, give me your email address, and I can also send my link to my own page, which has just my writings in it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that our listeners reach out and either buy a copy of your book or reach out to you personally to get an ebook copy. Either way would be wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my own understandings and awareness that hopefully can help others in their own process of awakening. Thanks you again, then.